What are some of the mistakes most accountants make with marketing in general?
Not doing it.
Not doing it at all.
Well, relying on referrals and word of mouth, number one, not building any sort of brand recognition. And that doesn't mean you have to create content, point and dance it. It just means you have to like have an opinion, have a perspective, have a unique way you see the world or tell a story, and have people recognize you for that, like we were saying. People remember me because I went on a tirade about how much I hate Venmo. And I think a lot of accountants do. So I'm just like, pick something that you feel strongly about one way or another. You have to have strong feelings about something, or else you'll never stand out.
Talk about like what was your educational background or like where did you start?
My educational background, I have a bachelor's in accounting. Um, and I was lucky enough to go to a school where we got 150 credit hours when we graduated.
Hell yeah, me too.
And from a bachelor's, and I sat for my CPA exam literally the Monday after graduation. So I was like, yeah, I even
The
had some of
test.
my, yeah,
You took the test. Yeah.
yeah, some of my professors even waived my final exams because they knew I was studying for that. So
Wow.
they were like, whatever, screw my little test, go study. Um, I had a lot of things that were pass fail. I was kind of like winging it my senior year. I was just studying for the CPA, and I passed all four parts within 1 month of starting work.
Wow.
That was like my dad told me I basically had to do that, and I was like, he was right. Because I can't study and work at the same time. Kudos to anyone who does. I cannot. I would still be studying today, or I would have given up long
You
ago.
you did the same thing I did, I think. I
Really?
sat for the first exam like early January. I
Mhm.
passed three of them before June when I started, or June or July when I started, and then I had to retake audit, of course, um,
And for
one
me,
month
it
into
was
working.
I passed all four on the first try, but my like closest little inch by of like 75 or 76 was reg
Mm. Yeah, of
because I was an
course, it
auditor.
happens like that.
Yeah, I was an
What
auditor. That's how it worked. Audit
what
was like a 91 or something insane because I knew audit like the back of my hand.
what you were working at firms? What firm did you start off at?
EY.
UI, and you made it all the way to what?
I was in audit until senior two, and then I moved to consulting advisory and I left at manager two.
Hmm. And what was that sort of moment where you decided to start your own firm?
That was 5 years later. So I left EY. Um, I had no, there was nothing pointing at me at starting my own firm. I left EY because I had a rude awakening when my dad passed away. That
Mm.
like it wasn't worth it anymore because on my bereavement leave, I got phone calls asking me asinine payroll questions and things like T&E questions. And I was like, I'm on bereavement leave. My dad died yesterday. Like with all due respect, what the like
Hmm.
stop calling me. And I realized I was never going to be respected by the firm the way that I respected the firm. And that's not a bad thing on them. I think they've never promised to be anything else. But I think once you realize your relationship with the firm, you go, okay, do I want to partake in this or don't I? And I just decided I was going to move on to, I worked in, excuse me, I worked in consulting. I worked actually at a SaaS company as director of professional services, which was like implementation of software for accounting firms. So I actually implemented workflow software for accounting firms and then moved on to their sales team as their director of technical sales. So that was actually really fun. I learned a lot about sales through that job.
What was the biggest lesson from that sales lesson?
Um, Selling benefits, not features.
Mm. The destination, not the
Hmm.
flight to get there. Yeah.
Exactly. Sell me Hawaii. Don't sell me. We're gonna go through TSA, and then we're gonna go wait, and then we're gonna
Mm.
go, wait for our car. It's like that's not fun, but the destination's fun. So we're willing to put up with all that for the destination.
Yeah, it's like I heard it for the first time a few days ago, but it's like there's the feature, there's the benefit, and then
Hmm.
there's the outcome.
Right.
So like the feature is one, plane ticket, the benefit is you're in Hawaii having vacation, and then the outcome is you're relaxing, you're enjoying yourself. That's like the outcome of the experience. And
Yeah.
a lot of marketers And that's the thing with accountants. Like we're very, I want to say detailed people, but we focus way too much on what people, um, oh, you're gonna get so and so email support. You're gonna get, this many calls. You're gonna get all this, and people really don't care. They just care about what is the outcome that they're gonna get. Now,
Yeah, like the
but
calls, the
go ahead,
emails, you're going to get so much of this, so much of that. No one cares. It's just, where are you taking me?
because here's the thing that I've learned. The it's really hard to sell like the dream scenario and it's kind of like this is a stupid analogy, but it makes a little sense. Like when I ask you what a perfect dog looks like just a dog in your home, um, what is it? Does he listen when you talk to him? Does he, not do like it's really hard to paint a picture of what a perfect pet looks like. But
Mhm.
everybody's got a story about what a bad one looks like. They shit on the carpet, they don't listen, they tear up the couch, they tear up the guest shoes. And so it's really easier to paint a picture on pain and like the problem that the prospect has than it is to sell them like all these sunshine and rainbows of like, oh, you're gonna get all these calls and you're gonna get this and that. They don't care. Sometimes and this is where you almost have to feel the person out in the discovery process. But what I've come to find is like a lot of online marketers, they sell the path to heaven. That's great. Works a lot of time. Sometimes you got to sell the plan out of hell. That's what I tell
Mm,
people.
I love that. Don't
Hmm.
sell the path to heaven, sell the plan out of
To
hell.
some people,
Ooh.
some people want to buy the plan out of hell. Some people will sunshine and rainbows buy the path to heaven. Some people will buy a plan out of hell, and you got to know which one
Yeah.
to pitch or
It's
sell.
it's also kind of like the analogy they use of like, are they buying painkillers or vitamins? And it's much easier to sell a
Never heard that.
painkiller. It's
Yeah.
much easier to sell a painkiller than a vitamin. Because there's a symptom. As opposed to buying the thing that I know will be good for me in the future, long-term benefit. I'm trying to suppress the immediate pain that I currently feel, which is kind of our human nature. So we take more urgency to the immediate pain as opposed to doing things that will benefit us in the long term, like eating our freaking vegetables, right? So it's it's
Brushing our
kind of like
teeth, eating our vegetables. Yeah.
right. And like sometimes tax strategy, for example, becomes the painkiller because it's like, I need to do something now. Like we're currently in November, right? And now people are like, hand me that painkiller, hand me that painkiller, because they know that they need that quick hit of something to relieve the problem. When in reality, it's like, well, my vitamin is my tax planning, like planning for it, but like what's unavoidable. And actually, the surprise is your biggest pain, not the amount half the time. So we eliminate the surprise, and suddenly it's like, oh, that wasn't as painful as I thought it would be, even though I owed the same amount this year. It's like because we planned for it and because it wasn't painful for you anymore. I took the whatever you want to call it, the nerves, the pain out of it. It's like, oh, I didn't realize that that didn't have to hurt as much. And then they realize they don't need such a strong painkiller because it's actually not that bad.
There's so many good analogies that we can
Mm.
make to explain like the tax preparer versus the tax planner versus the CFO versus the bookkeeper.
Oh yeah.
Um, how do you when you're articulating that, are you trying to do that in like longer form content like this? Do you straight up give them the analogy on the sales call? I do that all the
I
time.
do it all the time if it's not understood. So people start when I hear the word like CPA to describe everybody, or like I give it to
Yeah.
my CPA and I'm like, time out. What does your CPA do? As opposed to using the name of the person, can you tell me the function they
Hmm.
do? And half the time they're like, I don't even know what function they do. Like I just knew I had to hire somebody. So I have educated on sales calls before, but I have done it in long form content as well. I'm not going to go and like say, go listen to this podcast on a call. I'll explain it. But I always talk about if your tax return is the story of how your numbers spent the year, your bookkeeper is like your ghostwriter, co-author. Your tax planner is the co-author, like deciding what the plot's going to be. The tax preparer, simply publisher.
Mm.
So I said, here's the thing though, you don't expect the publisher, you don't blame the publisher when it's not a happy ending. Who do you blame?
The book author.
The person, right, the person who wrote the story. Well, you had the pen.
Mm.
And you can't expect the publisher. to change things. You don't expect the publisher to go change the words on paper. You need somebody who has access to that. When I explain it that way, it tends to resonate because they go, "Oh, okay, so the tax preparer actually isn't saving me any money." I go, "They might be. They might be, but it's not an expectation of what you're paying for. If you order tax preparation off the menu, that's typically not included as a side dish. Typically, they are going to go publish your story the way that you provide it to them on
Mm.
their software, and they're going to do something very simple. If they go above and beyond and help you plan, that's amazing, but it's not an assumption. So you have to be really clear about specifically ordering that as an upgrade. And then they get it. But I think no, people aren't educated enough on the options of like what's on the menu at an accounting firm. I think that people either order what they think they're supposed to, or they just assume that all they need is books or tax. They don't know what they need, but the accountants aren't taking the extra time broadly, generally, to actually explain and do the proper discovery to prescribe the right solution for them.
Yeah, us as accountants, we're not doing enough explanation of the differences.
No.
Y you were saying something there, stories, analogies,
Hmm.
something else I was gonna get into. It'll come back to me. I always use I love using the football analogy of like, look, I used to play football in high school. When we lost, our coach would ring us on Monday morning before school. And they call that Monday morning quarterbacking. It's telling us all the stuff we could have done, should have done differently, when instead we should have had a better offensive coordinator, somebody that was calling plays for us. That play caller is your tax advisor. Or I'll spin it a little bit depending on their background. And you like
Yeah,
football? I'm a
but
big
they
Packers
understand.
fan. Yeah. You
Yeah,
know,
but they
if
understand. And that's key in sales though. I learned that from my days of the SaaS company was I had
mm,
to tell the story the way they were used to experiencing it and they could relate to a feeling. It's like it's kind of like when this happens. And that's one thing I've discovered is kind of a superpower is I've been able to tap into these weird analogies that are like so simple and almost childlike, but people get it because they're like, "Oh, that makes sense when you describe it that way." So okay, so you kind of get what I'm going for here. And that really opens up the conversation because now you guys are on the same page with what you're talking about and you're able to articulate why what you do has value because they're appreciating that value and not just confused. Because I also think there's a degree of when you guys understand each other, there's trust. And that's the first thing to overcome is they have to trust you. And once they trust you, you're in. But it's a game of trust. Like with accounting, and tax and these advisory services, the currency is trust. As long as you have that, you're good. But you have to earn it.
I spent some time, and I think you probably know him, Mike Michalowicz from Profit
Hmm.
First Author. I spent a day
Yep.
with Mike, actually about a year ago, and one of the things he put on he had the notepad and he was flipping through the pages, and one of the things he put in a room, there was maybe 30 of us in the room, like entrepreneurs, business owners, and he wrote frequency equals trust. And he said it's the frequency at which you show up with your audience that builds trust with your audience.
Yep.
Um, and then it all clicked to me when I remembered a story, or like I remembered a real life experience where it was a holiday party in 2021 for real estate. I met this guy named David. And at the end of the party, he's like, "Oh, do you have a business card?" I said, "No, follow me on Instagram." And a year goes by. I've never heard or spoken to David since. And then we see each other at the same holiday party. And he comes up to me. He's like, "What's going on, Ryan? How's the property in Miami? How's the CPA firm doing? How's this? How's that?" And I
That.
realized that I was building trust with David through social media, through content this entire time. And now it feels like David feels like he trusts me.
Yeah. 100%. That's how it happens. And that's the podcast too.
Hmm.
So like for me, it's I have people who have been listening for years, months or years. I've been doing this for 4 years and I run into people at networking events and it's like, "Are you Shannon Weinstein?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And it's so weird. But it's like, "Oh, are you Shannon? Oh, I listen to your show all the time." And I'm like, "That's so cool." Like I can't believe people listen to this stuff.
Hmm.
Um it's just so weird to know that somebody's listening to your voice. It's still kind of awkward to me,
I hate
but
my voice.
yeah. So it's weird to me to know that even though I make a podcast, it's like Shannon, get over it. You have a podcast. But but I'm like, "Oh, you listened to it?" And she's like, "Yeah, I've been like dying to get on your list to do a power session with you." And I'm like, "Let's go. Let's do it." But it's cool because she wanted to meet me in person. We actually met. She kind of wanted to like get a feel for if I was the person from the podcast, I guess, or like get to know me and interact in person because she knew we were going to be at the same event. So it was cool because she approached me and I had already built that trust with her, even though I was meeting her for the first time. She felt like she knew me. And another thing with brand, especially, because that's brand is essentially trust.
Trust.
Like
Yeah.
that's really what it is. And trust, recognition, reputation. And she had come up to me and I was like, so like, what are you doing for your books? What are you doing for this, that? And she's like, okay, don't kill me. I use Venmo sometimes. And I said, that's actually really cool that you already knew that I don't like that. Like she knew that she's like, I know you hate Venmo. And I was like, I just met you. Right. So I'm going, that is kind of cool that my brand is strong enough in certain regards that you remembered how I feel about something. You remembered something I told you and you brought that with you into the conversation as though we had personally had that conversation before. And that was kind of cool to me. I said, that's brand in
That's
action.
brand.
Yeah, when someone remembers what you said, carries it with them, and then associates you with that concept and then brings it back. Like that was just kind of really cool for me to see. And I said, I love that you remember that about me. And I'm like, by the way, I don't hate it that much, but like I'm making content and I'm trying to speak to the broad, the broad stroke of my opinion. Like you're not in trouble, but that was pretty cool.
Tony Robbins does that a lot. Have you ever
Hmm.
studied some of his stuff? Like
Yeah.
when people show up for the multi-day events, he'll tell people to back into the parking spot so they can face forward when they're ready to leave. He's like, you should never pull into a parking spot. You should always back in so you're always ready to leave. And then what happens is people leave that and they always back into a spot. And every time they pull out, they just think about him. That's
No.
Bran. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
There's he
that's
has
so cool.
he has tons of those little like things that I've picked up along the way. It's funny that you say that because I'll never forget this. This was a couple probably a year and a half ago. I was my first house. My now wife and I were living there, and my office was my living room because it was a small two-bed house. And I was on a call with this lady, a prospect, and I cannot tell you what it was that was said or what I had said during that call, but I start going on to one of my sayings and my sentences, and she finishes my sentence while I'm saying it, and my wife is on the
Uh,
couch. She's like, "Wait a minute, what just happened right there?" And I
yeah,
go, I'm telling you, Vanessa, I'm like, these people listen to what I say, that they love me. And she's able to say what I was gonna say because she had just I've said it so
yeah.
much and there's that brand, that recognition with it
But
too.
like you said, frequency, repetition, right?
Hmm.
It's like a song that you can't get out. Like I still know the friggin' lyrics from songs from 1997. Like it's just because it's in your head. Friggin' bop, forever, imprinted, stamped. Can't remember a damn thing from my CPA exam, but I can recite the lyrics to most of my teenage years songs. It's just it's repetition.
What's I've studied songwriting and like storytelling a
Mm,
lot,
yeah.
and that's the part of a good song puts you right in the action. It puts you
Hmm.
right there in the scene. You know the guy that he was Elvis's manager. I forget the guy's name, Colonel something.
Hmm.
Um, he managed two other people in his lifetime after Elvis. Forget the other guy's name, but one of the guys' names was Billy Ray Cyrus. Now, Billy Ray Cyrus, awful singer. But you know what he could really do? Well, tell a story. And you know
Hmm.
who he taught to tell stories to? Miley. And if you listen to any Miley Cyrus song that ever became popular, it's a story.
Hmm.
I hopped off the plane at LAX with a dream in my cardigan. It puts you right there in the scene. A good story sets the scene. Like Grisham or Stephen King, if you've ever read their books, these guys will spend 3 pages just setting the scene for one line of dialogue. And
Hmm.
it's like, how do we tell our story in a way through our podcast and social media that like keeps the reader, keeps the listener engaged and ready to buy?
Yeah, I think they also have to see themselves in the story when it comes to
Yes.
the marketing. Is like you can't be, how do I put this? Like you can't be lecturing or
Hmm.
talking at people. You want to make them feel part of the conversation and you want to make them feel like you're not just teaching at them, but you're having a conversation with them. You're bringing them with you. So it's why a lot of my discovery calls are just that. It's all questions. It's just like learning more about how like their origin story, their mission, their goals, and then figuring out how we can fit into their story. So my
Mm.
whole goal when I'm meeting with a client is like, tell me your story. And I want to see if we can be a character in it, if we can help further the plot.
I don't know if you remember this, but you were helping me when I did my first course on Kajabi. I don't know if you remember
Mm-hmm.
this, but
I do.
I think I was traveling when I did your podcast for the first time.
Yep.
Um, you had kind of given me some tips on, I can't remember what it was, affiliate links or something
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Kajabi.
How to set that up.
And
Yeah.
I went on to I've made millions of dollars in info products or like virtual events. But
Awesome.
I always remember that time you took after our podcast to help me, show me what to do. I didn't know anything about that stuff at the time. And
That's
so I just
awesome.
want to say thank you for that.
Of course. And that's the cool thing is like, I'm like, oh, hey, I know how to do that. Do you want help with it? And I'm not going like, oh, well, pay me for my time or like anything
Hmm.
else. Like there was none of that. It was purely like, hey, do you know how to set that up? I can show you. And that's what we need to do more of. I feel like a lot of, and this goes into like, it kind of goes into like the accountant mindset of like billing for time
Hmm.
and like valuing that type of stuff. I'm like, just be of service. Just help people get to their results. Just help people get what they need. Because you remembered that little thing. Like I remember helping you out with that, but like it didn't have the same imprint, right? Because I'm just like, yeah, I took 2 minutes and I helped Brian set up his affiliate link. No biggie. And then you calling back to that now, you're just like, yeah, and I went on to make millions, not just from that, but like went on to make millions after I've understood info products a bit better and like I laid some type of brick in that house, right? To help you with that. So that's pretty cool because all I see is this little brick I laid, but you're like, I see the house that I built from it or
Mm.
with it. So that's really cool.
What are some of the mistakes most accountants make with, let's just start with marketing in general, like
Not
broad,
doing it.
not doing it at all? Yeah.
Well, relying on referrals and word of mouth, number one,
Mm.
not building any sort of brand recognition. And that doesn't mean you have to create content, point and dance at shit. It just means you have to like have an opinion, have a perspective, have a unique way you see the world or tell a story, and have people recognize you for that, like we were saying. Um, People remember me because I went on a tirade about how much I hate Venmo. And I think a lot of accountants do. So I'm just like, pick something that you feel strongly about one way or another
You
and
have
like
to.
talk about it. Talk about it. You have to have strong feelings about something or else you'll never stand out. And it could be in the positive or the negative, but people are not afraid to be polarized, or people are too afraid to be polarizing, excuse me. They shouldn't be afraid to be polarizing because you can't be a service provider to everybody. So I would rather take the risk of people relating to me in certain aspects by really getting to them and like finding something we have common ground on than like softly tiptoeing around anything of meaning and just talking about fluff and then hoping somebody comes along who's looking for me. It just doesn't work that way. You try to attract everybody, you attract nobody.
Nobody. It's kind of funny because it was like dancing around in the background for a lot of years with these high profile sort of entrepreneur business type people like the
Hmm.
Trumps and Grant
Hmm.
Cardones of the world, where they've recently come out and said, well, look, like I don't need 100% people to like me. In fact, half of America hates Trump. And he still got
Hmm.
elected somehow.
Hmm.
When it comes to marketing and sales, it's like you only need to sell to 10, 20% of the your audience. 80% of people aren't going to buy from you. That's totally fine. They weren't going to spend money with you anyway.
Exactly. And I only have 12 clients. I can
Hmm.
find 12 clients in any niche. That's not a problem. Uh, it's more about, it doesn't even have to be political. It could just be on any
Correct.
particular topic. You could just say, this little thing drives me nuts. This thing makes me happy. I love this. I don't like this. I even made a joke on a reel one time that was like, if you take 3 or 4 days to respond to an email, you're not my client. This is back when I was obsessed over email. I've gotten better. But I would say, like, you're not a good fit for us if I have to follow up 3 times to get a hold of you. And in a way, it was kind of repel marketing because I was also saying,
Here's who I
hey,
don't want
like,
to work.
Yeah, here's what I don't want to work with. And it's like, oh, I'm offended because that's me. Good. Bye. It's okay. Like like good. By all means consume my content, but I don't think we're a good fit to be clients. Like you shouldn't be think of it as like a romantic partner. It's
Mm.
like you should be a little bit picky about who you work with on both sides of the table. And you should be looking for what you value. And to your point earlier, Ryan, about how when you said like the pain point is palpable, but like the the vitamin or the pleasure point is not as clear to like indicate what they want, but they know what they're running from, but not running toward, right? So I actually did this exercise to figure out my core values because I was trying to figure out what are our core values and like there's so many different values. What would I define them as so that I can make sure I'm putting that out there for clients and out there for team members? Because by the way, hiring is just marketing for employees. So I was trying to figure out what are the values. I went back and I said, I'm going to do this deep dive into all the clients I hated or all the aspects of clients I hated. Why didn't it work out? Why did they drive me crazy? Why did I do that sigh when I saw an email from them? Why? What are the aspects of it that drove me? If I had like a bad Yelp review for my clients, because the bad reviews are paragraphs, the good reviews are excellent service, 5 star, would go again. And then the bad
That's
reviews are
just like restaurants.
right.
Yeah.
But the bad reviews are every little dust thing that was on the, like every little
Hmm.
detail, you know? So I realized that our brains tend to grab the exceptions versus the norms. They tend to notice when things go sideways from expectation a lot faster. And I don't know if there's a psychological, evidence to back this up, but I was much, it was much easier for me to go through here are all the clients that are not good fits. What are their common traits? What are the things that they have quote unquote done to me? I had a little like party of like, how have I been wronged by these people, even though that's not really what happened. And then I kind of flipped it into, okay, so those are core values. Those are boundaries that they crossed with me. What do I call that boundary? Or what do I call that value that they violated? And then I figured out what our core values were because I realized that if it was important enough for me to let go of a client or vice versa, then it was important enough to declare as a value.
Mm.
Because it's like, what would make you break up with someone? What would make you fire somebody? It's actually my favorite interview question I ask when I hire. What will make you quit this job?
What do
Like,
most
what
people say?
will, I would say a lot of people say if I feel like I'm being micromanaged and not trusted,
Mm.
if I feel like, if I feel like we're doing something unethical, if I feel like, or if any of the clients disrespects me, et cetera, et cetera. So they actually declare essentially their values on that. What they're really doing is declaring their values on that call. What will make you quit? Well, guess what? Those are the lines that shall not be crossed to them. So I
Yeah,
say, okay,
right.
those are the lines. So then we're going to define that as a value and make sure that's in alignment with our values.
Um, that is great stuff. Talk about, so you mentioned that you only have 12 clients now. That's like
Hmm.
12 actual relationships that you guys are managing.
Hmm.
And so what is that? You're pretty much doing everything for them
Yep.
from soup to nuts? Just,
Hmm.
can you talk about, so how big is the team then for the 12 clients?
4 people.
Four people, four employees, 12 clients. Nice.
Hmm.
And are you meeting with these clients? Is it monthly, quarterly?
We meet monthly or biweekly, depending on the client. So if they're newer, I would say within their first 6 to 9 months, we meet biweekly. And
Hmm.
then beyond that, if we feel like we're in a good rhythm and we're using our Slack channel effectively and constantly collaborating and communicating, then I typically will reduce it down to monthly if we feel like we can get away with monthly. None of us want to create more meetings for the sake of it. So we stick with a monthly standing meeting, but I have ad hoc meetings all the time on current initiatives, things that are going on, urgent matters, transactions happening. So we're touching base every week or every other week at the latest.
So, because it sounds like you have a really good lifestyle firm. I mean, you're sitting in Costa Rica, right
Yeah.
now,
Yeah,
only
we haven't
four
mentioned that yet.
employees.
Yeah, I'm in Costa
Um,
Rica.
how did it, because did you always only have less than a dozen clients, or like tell me about, did you once have, because I got like, uh, a lot. I probably
Yeah.
got four, 500. They all
Yeah.
pay 7 to 10,000, but.
Yeah.
I got a lot.
Yeah. So I've always been, and hey, like there's different models, right? I think that we all have to
Yeah.
like realize that there's not one way to run a firm, and we
Mm.
don't have to copy what the big firms did or what our past bosses did and so on. We can all do it our own way. My version of that was so I'm well, you have to understand, I'm a little bit of a control freak in the sense that I want to be able to determine how things are run and have control over the entire end-to-end process. I also love the idea of the vertical integration of having us just do everything um, in the process and in the
Yeah.
pipeline and deliver that value holistically to a client. I think there's value in the one-stop shop. So that actually is a selling point and a value proposition element. Is we don't have to roommate with other CPAs on the client. Where it's like, we're going to get your tax return done in February. We're going to move on. Like by the end of Q1, the taxes are in the rearview mirror and we're moving on and we're going to do forecasting. So it's a very specific like value prop that we present. But like I said, we have 12 clients. We can do that. But to answer your question, no, it was not always like that. I had 120 at one point, tax and bookkeeping clients,
I feel
like
like that's when we met.
variety. Yeah.
And you just like kept the good ones. How many? So from
Yeah.
the 120, how did
Kept
you
the
cut
good
down to
ones.
12?
For whatever like in case any of those clients find this podcast, I'm like, I'm like, didn't just keep the
They
good
won't. They
ones.
won't.
Keep the good ones. No, what I just made a decision that um there were different paths to a seven-figure business. One was more of $500 to $5,000 services. Uh,
Mm.
and I just realized like there's too many people. I'm forgetting people's kids' names. I'm forgetting the things going on in their lives. I'm forgetting all this stuff and it's turning into a machine. And while that can be profitable, I made a conscious decision that I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to build a relationship first business, but I can't do that with 500 kids or 200 kids. Like
That's
I
a
can't.
selling point to somebody.
Yeah. I
Like,
can't do that.
uh, if somebody said that, I don't even have kids yet, but if somebody
Yeah,
said
me
that to me in
neither.
a call, they're like, hey, look, you could go to a law firm, you could go to an accounting firm. They got hundreds, thousands of clients, but I'm gonna remember your kid's name. That I don't know. That to me is
We
like
follow them on social
that's
media and we go so far as to like send them presents when like their kid got a black belt in karate, we send them a note.
mm.
Like it's that level. And I've always said I wanted to be like that because I've always admired hospitality, hotel chains that are like the Ritz-Carlton, those like high-end hotels that just that extra touch of like, damn, they thought of
Unreasonable
that.
hospitality. Yeah.
Exactly. I read that book. That should be like my business Bible. I love those little touches, the little things that are low effort, high impact.
Hmm.
If you've read that book, it's the hot dog
The hot
that
dog, yeah.
like yeah. So I said I love that and I want to build a business based on that. Like I'm so passionate about that concept. So we decided a few years ago to to change everything over and I quote unquote fired. I let go of about 85 clients over a summer. And here's what I did with them. It wasn't as simple as selling the list because I don't personally believe, you can disagree with me, but I don't personally believe in selling humans. I'm like selling the list is
Well,
like they picked me and they picked me for a reason because of a relationship. So I said it's not in my power to just simply transfer you over like an object and like a currency or a commodity. So what I did was um I set them up with referrals. I got referral commissions for them, but I set them up with referrals based on who I think would be a good fit for them in my network. I personally recommended different professionals. I have a list of recommended professionals at all times in case we can't service someone. I want to make sure that they are still taken care of with somebody I trust because they value my trust. So I'm like, I'm going to transfer my trust to this person and know that you're taken care of. Um, but I did send a few clients, like I actually sent them a little plant that said, thank you for being part of my growth. Here's to a profitable, right? Here's to a profitable year for you. And I look forward to possibly working with you again in the future. I had an amazing departure where nobody was like hard feelings. And people did come back around eventually and like ask if they could work with me again. People resurfaced and people recommended me, even though they weren't working with me anymore. I got referrals from those former clients
mm.
because they were like, I never left with a bad taste in my mouth with Shannon. Like she grew and it was circumstantial and no ill will against her, but they still referred me. So I let them go thoughtfully in about 2021, 22, 21-ish. And then really pursued the CFO route, trying to do more for less people. And I couldn't be happier with that decision. We have a small group of clients, a small roster, but it allows for a lot of joy in the team too, to really get to know the clients and celebrate along with them and to feel like they're really making an impact.
Wow. So were you thinking about that for a while? Like where did you get the idea to go from 120 down to 12?
Because, well, the math, right? We're accountants.
Yeah.
I go, okay, my path to 1 million is either this price point times this many, or I thought, but what's my capacity? If I have a team of 3 or 4 people, reasonably, we could do 10 to 12 clients together without being
Hmm.
stretched too thin. Uh, and to do the level of service we want to. So I said, how much would I have to charge them in order for me to hit my goal? And is that reasonable given the value proposition, which is the most important thing? So our current price point is 7,500 a month for CFO services. And what's funny is the number one objection I get to that is, well, for that price, I could hire somebody. That's $90,000 a year. They're like, for that price, I could hire someone. I'm like, yes, with a year of experience out of school.
Yeah,
Or
nobody.
the 3 or the 4 of us. My bookkeeper has a master's degree. My other bookkeeper has 14 years of experience. I'm a CPA, CFO. Like, yeah, by all means, use your 90K
I got a
budget
great
and do
I got a
that.
great story for you.
Yeah.
I forget where I heard this, but it was on the price objection, right?
Mm,
And it was this price objection was specifically towards people in the medical field.
okay.
I think that's the buying audience of who it was towards. So they're like, look, imagine you got to do open heart surgery. Okay. The average normal open heart surgery is going to cost you around $50,000. That's just the average, 15 years experience, blah, 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 good hospital, 50 grand.
Yeah.
You can get it done for 5 grand. But look, that guy, fresh out of medical school. In fact, he's only practiced on pigs, hasn't even done a human. But you can get him for 5 grand.
Yeah.
Or,
Cheaper is always better.
right?
Mm-mm.
Or, yeah. So it was something like that. I'll have to send it to you, but
Yeah.
it's
But
like,
it's like we have to
yeah.
break free of the commoditization of what we do because then you're competing on price. So if you're selling
Hmm.
simple tax prep, simple bookkeeping, you are commoditizing. So like then people are
Yeah.
going to compete on price because they see like, so what's good bookkeeping is just done. They don't have a perception of what's good or bad. So they see done as the goal. They don't know what's good or bad. So then they'll just go with the cheapest option to get it done. And that's all they see. And that's not their fault, but they don't know good from bad. They can't tell quality. It's like looking at one of those like diamonds or like fake diamonds or lab created. And it's just like, it all looks the same to me. So why would I spend this much money for the real thing when I could get lab created? And it's like
Hmm.
valid, right? So I can't knock that logic. But I think what we have to do is educate people on the difference. And we have to broadly uh just be clear about what it is, the value that we offer and how we're a little bit different and how their life is going to be different because of it. Because good bookkeeping versus bad bookkeeping, it's like somebody who charges $1,000 a month versus $100, all the customer sees is a $900 price difference,
Hmm.
900% price difference. And they're obviously going to go to the $100 one if they don't know the difference between the two products.
Hmm. I could have you here all day, but
I know.
selfishly, I gotta go in like 12 minutes and I want to pick your brain on some stuff
Go
offline.
for it.
So where
Yeah.
can listeners of the podcast find you?
My podcast, Keep What You Earn. That's the best place
Awesome.
to find me.
Thank you so much, Shannon.